Hi, this is Rich Mogul from Securosis, and welcome to the Firestarter on July 22nd, 2014. And as you could probably already tell, because of his heavy breathing pulling the automated camera onto him, we've got Mike Rothman.
I'm going to put the microphone as far away from my mouth as possible so nobody can hear anything. So how about that?
Yep, that'll work. That'll work well. Your audio actually sounds pretty good. And Adrian Lane. Adrian, how's so I'm in Boulder right now. How's I hear it's we're cracking 110 consistently in Phoenix.
Oh, it hasn't been that bad. We're at 102, 103, but it's plenty hot, and apparently I have microphone failed just like Mike. So
Yeah, we'll
No,
just.
not as bad as Mike. There you go.
Well, I want to get everybody excited. We're excited about the Firestarter, so everybody should be excited about the Firestarter.
heavy breathing all the way around. Yes.
Yeah, yeah. So, yeah, no, it's kind of interesting over here. I was mentioning to the guys this morning, I got to sleep till 8 a.m. Apparently, if you take your kids up to 12,000 feet and have a snowball fight next to a herd of elk, then drive back, then spend the entire next day in an amusement park in 90-degree heat, they sleep a little late. So I now know what I need to do to get sleep. So recreate that.
Hold. Did you actually just say snowball fight next to elk in the middle of July?
Yes. Yeah.
So you have
The
one of
kid,
those cool transporter beams that takes you anywhere in the world you want to be?
if you know where to find the snow, it's here year round. So I did the easy way. From years of mountaineering around here, there's actually permanent snow fields in Boulder. But we just went up to Rocky Mountain National Park and we drove Trail Ridge Road, which is it's the highest major highway or major road in the country, and so it cuts across the Continental Divide from the eastern to the western slope, and in Rocky Mountain National Park. So there's parts of the road where you are over 12,000 feet, and so we went up. And you got to be careful. You don't want to go too much into the tundra because it's a super sensitive ecosystem. But they had a few spots where there were snow patches, and we pulled over for one of those, and it was right off the road. And there were a bunch of other people there, so we weren't going to make it any worse. And then right around that time, like a herd of elk came up, and we're hanging out. So that the elk were all feeding by us, and we're taking pictures, and we're having a snowball fight with the kids, and the girls are complaining because these gloves are no good for snowballs because they almost never wear gloves, and they're just not used to that. And they had a
So
blast.
when they saw Ryan, do you think the elk thought, that looks like a strawberry, I want to eat it?
Elks are not known as being, eating humans, but I realize you're a bit of a city dweller, Mike. But,
Yeah, that's true.
yeah.
That is true.
So,
If I
So
was an
next
elf,
week,
that's what I would be thinking, but that's just me.
so
hey,
next
I
week
mean,
you're going to teach them how to rappel down the flat irons. Is that how you're going to get them to sleep?
I'm working on it. So, yeah, a few years. I think Riley's close. I could get her up the flat irons now. I'm not gonna give it a shot. I'll wait till she's like 8 for that. Um, to do that. So, yeah, no, it was pretty great up there. I love that mountain air and the storms coming in, and as we're walking around and pretty beautiful stuff. So. But the whole impetus for this was, there's that Frozen movie, which Mike you might be familiar with, having daughters,
Yes.
and the song "Do you want to build a snowman?" And so, what months ago, knowing they were coming to Colorado, Aaron, my 3-year-old, walks up to me and goes, "Daddy, when we go to Colorado, we're going to build a snowman." And I'm like, "In July." So we had to go up there, but we just did the snowball fight instead of the snowman. But I think my kids were satisfied.
Good, good.
But it was a huge deal. She was telling all of her friends, "Daddy and I are going to build a snowman when we go to Colorado." And then now I'll bring them out during ski season to start them on skiing, and they'll spend the whole time crying because of how cold they are. But that's different kind of parental fun. So enough of that. As people might notice, I'm not in my usual office. Mike isn't in his, so video quality might be a little shaky compared to usual. Adrian's video quality is as crappy as usual. And this week we're going to go ahead and talk about there's been some kind of security researchers and disclosures because it's hacker conference season.
It's
Uh,
that time of the year.
and the first story to come up hit yesterday was a researcher. I'm mind blanking on his name. It's a little harder to pronounce. I'll pull it up before the end and I'll link it into the show notes. But basically, he did a presentation at Hackers on Planet Earth about the claiming that Apple has kind of left some things in iOS to allow people law enforcement and government in particular, to monitor stuff on the iPhone or gain easier access to it. So do either of you guys, see much of this story? I know the Apple stuff usually falls on my shoulders.
Yeah,
I did.
absolutely.
I got nothing.
Okay.
So, well, I mean, I was reading about it because this was part of what we had covered in Insight last week. Is that, after the last fire started, we were talking about China talking about the iPhone as a threat to national security, and obviously, Apple's built in monitoring onto their endpoint devices, so they can actually do that. But it's not like law enforcement is necessarily has full and open access to these devices without some sort of a warrant or without going to Apple to get that access to the device. So, I read the slide deck this morning. That was a great presentation, factually accurate, but I didn't. There seemed to be quite a bit of spin and quite a bit of scary DHS people, hiding in the corners, waiting to steal all of your information off your device.
Yeah, I mean, I looked at it, and my first response, so I didn't know anything about it. We were at the amusement park yesterday, and one of my editors over at Macworld's like, "Hey, Rich, what do you think? What's going on here?" And I looked at it, and I'm like, "Interesting." I'm like, as far as I can tell, this actually looks technically accurate. So the researcher, discussed a few things, and one was that there is a PCAP service for packet logging that's available on the device. The other is that there are a lot of information that he claimed was not useful for diagnostics, but that was in these diagnostic programs that could technically get to a lot of data on your device, particularly depending on how the data was protected or what mode the device was in the last time you logged in, those kinds of kind of detail sorts of things. And then the other is that there was another when you physically connected the device again, but all three of these required that kind of a connection, at least initially, that there was some additional application data that could be recovered from the device, even if it was encrypted data, using a tool that's was originally used for when you plug in iTunes to move data into applications. Looked at it all, like, hey, that appears to be technically accurate, but the clincher is that you have to have an authorized device connection. So that means that you have to have an authorized plugin, and the user has to authorize that connection manually when the phone is unlocked. And there are ways to spoof that, but not easy. So or not straightforward. It is the kind of thing a government can do. If you do a black bag job on somebody's laptop or desktop, you can get some of that connection profile stuff and spoof it. There may be some other ways of forcing the connection. There's been some tools out there, but this is an area that we know Apple has actually continued to harden. It's one of the reasons the Lightning adapters are so expensive, because there's actually chips in that to basically uniquely identify it and or not uniquely identify the cable, but anyway to help secure those connections. So if you break what Apple considers an important security protection on the device, then these diagnostic tools become available. They're not running all the time, but you can turn them on if you know what you're doing. That part's all accurate. However, he was saying, well, Apple's deliberately left those in there for law enforcement or whoever, was kind of his claim, because he saw no legitimate use. And I can kind of confirm that there is legitimate use for those tools on those devices.
Is it true that those things can be brute force? If you have physical access to the phone, I'm pretty sure Dino Diazobi did something a couple of years ago at Black Hat where if you had physical access, you could pretty much brute force any PIN code under 7 or 8 digits.
That's a different kind of attack than what he was talking about. So there are ways to brute. It still takes longer because you can't do it off the device without a special device ID that Apple themselves can't even recover. So you have to actually do that because that's tied to your PIN code. You can do it probably within a day or within a couple of days. Sometimes less, just depends on the nature of the brute force. However, if you do a longer passcode, it becomes significantly extremely difficult at that point, because you actually have to run it on the device, and so you have to use the chip, which is rate limited on the device for the brooting attempts, because of that hardware ID that's embedded into that device. Apple, when they do work with law enforcement, can recover certain kinds of live data, but they're not able to, and what they can do is they can get first-party app data, which includes photos, SMS messages, and a couple of other things, which if you read my articles and the iOS security paper I did relatively recently, I mean, we just know that those are less secure because those don't have data protection, the passcode PIN-enabled encryption on them. That encryption actually is being enabled in iOS 8, so they're closing that loophole. And so that's why kind of like to me, the technical part of that very interesting. Talk gives you a lot of ideas about how the forensics work and everything else. Don't want to take anything back from that. But the other part, the ascribing malicious intent on the part of Apple, I think that falls apart. They have closed more and more of these holes over time, including tighter and tighter hardware connections. And are they perfect? No, I mean not at all. And then B, they're even talking about, they've even publicly announced that they're, adding data protection on iOS 8 for, the first-party services, and it's going to become even increasingly difficult to recover data on the device no matter who you are. So I wouldn't say it's perfect. And, if you had asked me, I don't know, 3-4 years ago, or when the iPhone first came out, I was one of the guys that wrote it's not enterprise ready. I kind of worry everybody thinks I'm just an Apple fanboy these days, and thinking Apple security is perfect. But I used to be kind of critical, and almost everything that I've been critical of, almost everything, not everything, has been improved over time and improved pretty significantly. So, and iOS hardening just gets better with every version. And I mean, compare this to an Android phone and get whatever you want off of those, or even the current versions of BlackBerry.
You're still a fanboy.
Well, I mean, I like this stuff. I use it.
I want the big damn screen. Where's my big screen?
Oh, Mike, dude, you and size. It's just
True.
and ironic.
True.
I mean,
You got to compensate somehow.
we're both white boys from the tri-state area, so
Yeah.
white Jewish boys.
Yeah.
There's
You know how that works.
Yeah, exactly. All right, so Mike, but you had another one of these researcher foibles.
I did. And again, we're about what, 2 weeks out from Black Hat, which inevitably means lawyers will get involved, sessions will get canceled, the echo chamber will echo and kind of gnash their teeth and wring their hands about how unfair everything is and how tough it is to be a security researcher. And that's just the way it goes, right? We've been doing this a long time, and it inevitably happens every year. So this year's thing is about Tor, right? The anonymizing network that evidently the NSA has owned for many years, right? So basically the whole pitch was how these two guys from Carnegie Mellon, two researchers from Carnegie Mellon, were going to show how you could de-anonymize Tor. And kind of basically, and their sales pitch for the session was, you don't have to be the NSA to de-anonymize Tor. Well, there are a couple problems with that. One is Carnegie Mellon is actually affiliated with a little organization called the CERT, right? And the CERT is actually funded by DHS. And the NSA happens to reside within where, Adrian?
I think that would be DHS, Mike.
DHS, thank you. Thank you, Captain Correlation. So therefore, now we are in a situation where the lawyers from Carnegie Mellon, who are probably marionettes of the CERT, who happen to be marionettes of the NSA, who are a part of DHS, are saying, we don't really want you to talk about how, the flaws in Tor can be utilized to de-anonymize it for the simple reason that we haven't had a chance to fix it yet, so that we're still the only ones with the way to de-anonymize Tor. Yes, that is a very cynical view of the world, and I've been known to be that once or twice. But, the fact of the matter is, again, it's probably pretty interesting research. Carnegie Mellon has basically taken a public stance that neither them nor the CERT had publicly or had given the researchers approval to talk about that research publicly. And of course, since it happens under Carnegie Mellon's umbrella, they have a right to do that. So all above board, from the standpoint of legality, always going to be a black eye for the folks that get in the way of this. Researchers will research, and they don't always ask for permission for things. So I'm pretty confident in saying that, this is maybe the 2014 version of my lawyer has told me I can't do something, and there will inevitably be a 2015 and a 2016 version because nobody seems to learn from our past mistakes.
Word of advice, kids, before you present at Black Hat, have the lawyers on stage with you.
That's exactly right.
And the EFF actually provides a lot of guidance and help for researchers.
Only if you ask the question, Rich. Only if you ask the question.
Okay, yeah.
And I don't know if they did. I don't know if they didn't. But the fact of the matter is that, Carnegie Mellon can very easily turn around and say, we didn't know what the hell was going on and we never gave these guys permission, means, they just did it.
Yeah. No, and look, I mean, my personal position, obviously, I'm kind of I spend a lot of time with security researchers doing, and sometimes more than just drinking with them. I'm a huge supporter of what they do, and I think it's absolutely vital and critical. And I'm always wary of like laws and stuff that come into place, like what we've seen in Germany, to kind of restrict the ability of researchers to operate. By the same point, they need to be responsible, and I don't mean the responsible disclosure that's purely preached from the vendor side. I mean, there is responsibility that's involved with this. I'm not saying any of these researchers are irresponsible. I think the gentleman who did the iOS work, again, I will get his name put into the show notes because I apologize to him for that. I think it was good technical work. I don't think that he did anything irresponsible by any means in his presentation. He wasn't releasing any new O days that would all of a sudden put everybody's phones at risk. But he ascribed a malicious intent, and based on his own assessment, which appears deeply flawed. That none of this is usable for diagnostic purposes, and the answer is, well, yeah, it's completely usable if you have the tool that's meant to read those file formats and provide the diagnostic information that you just don't happen to have access to. With these guys, again, it was a case of, I probably quite likely they would have had no problems being able to present this information, if they, kind of, were a little bit more cautious and kind of understood kind of disclosure issues. By the same token, we've seen, very bad things happen, vendors being freaking idiots. So, who is it? Was CipherCloud issued DMCA takedown notices when somebody just tried to do a stack exchange, question about how their crypto work. There's the whole Michael and Cisco thing, which was, awesome for Black Hat and awesome for Mike Lynn in the end, because it just made, everybody pay more attention. I mean, these people have not heard of the Streisand effect, which is where if you shut something down, and the more you try and shut it down, the more attention it's going to get, and the worse it's going to be for you. So I think there's definitely a lot of work that needs to be done in working with researchers and understanding it. Realizing a lot of these guys they're incredibly intelligent technical professionals that don't have experience in working with this stuff. They don't know you got to deal with lawyers, even in today's day and age.
Exactly, and it's not necessarily merchandised to any great degree. And again, you kind of see a tale of two disclosures, right? One was Heartbleed with their friggin' logo, on the day that it was announced, right? And have these other guys who are clearly running afoul of the lawyers, and then the third dude for Apple is just drawing the wrong conclusion based upon a very limited view of how the world works. So I think it's representative of the reality that you have all sorts of security researchers that come from all sorts of different backgrounds. I think if you want to play in that game, you need to understand how the world works, especially if you do it under the auspices of a corporation or some kind of university environment. If you're a guy in your basement doing research, obviously there are things you can do without having to go through that level of approval. And the like. Although, you are certainly subjected to being bullied by almost anybody because you're a guy in a basement, right? But short of that, I mean, you just have to understand the rules of how your organization treats that kind of stuff, because all of these things are easily avoidable if you just, ask a couple of questions and try to do things in a process that the organization is comfortable with.
Yeah, I mean, it's manageable, and sometimes you do get to the point if something is super serious. I mean, there are cases where it legitimately is being covered up to, a very deep degree. We've seen that particularly around things like SCADA, control system security for utilities and other such things. Some friends of ours, Rob Gran and Dave Maynor, actually had the FBI show up on their door for some research they were doing years ago, which was actually on a vendor's product, and the vendor managed to, play FBI, and they, I think. Can't remember. I know they eventually released at least some of that. So but the thing is if you think you're on something that sensitive and that big, get help. So go to the EFF. I would say these days, go talk to somebody over on the DEF CON side more than the Black Hat side. Even tell us. We'll send you contact names to other security researchers with a lot of experience. I've got no problem. I've done that in the past. Who can kind of help shepherd you through some of these things so that you keep yourself out of trouble, because that's what it's about. We want you guys to be able to do the work, because we all here are big supporters of it. But by the same token, you can avoid yourself a lot of headaches and so understanding what's going to happen and not having and understanding kind of how the world works when things get big enough. So I don't know. I think we beat this one to death today, as we do every week, but this is good. I like this discussion today. I'd like to thank Mike and Adrian as usual. Any last thoughts, guys, or should we just close it out?
I want to hear more about elks.
It was pretty cool. I'll send you the pictures.
I was kidding.
Oh, Yeah. Well, go away then. Go back to the beach in Jersey with your toxic waste. Or, sorry, Long Island, wherever you
Yeah.
are, Jersey.
Yeah.
Somewhere on that East Coast. And all right, well, we'll see you guys over at Black Hat. And I'm not sure we'll be able to have time. Usually, we like to do supersized episodes before some of the major events, but this is a pretty crazy one. Our cloud security class is the numbers are ridiculous at this point in terms of what we go in. So we're putting it together. Myself and James Arlen are putting together a bunch of new content, higher end, kind of more advanced content to bring to that. Plus, we got our usual papers and other work going on that always seems to saturate before Black Hat. But we'll try and get at least one more out before the show, and then that week, yeah, no Firestarter, unless we record it drunkenly from the secret locations. Yeah, Mike's just shaking his head. Yeah, not gonna happen. Yeah,
No shot.
not gonna happen.
No
Not
shot
gonna
of that.
happen.
All right, thanks everyone. Have a great week.